Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar titled Making Strides in Marketing Automation. So my name is Tom Kopog, and I'll be your host for the next 45 minutes or so. To introduce myself, I run Marketo's solution consulting team in EMEA, working with our customers and prospects to help them adopt marketing automation solutions and transform how sales and marketing work together to create better customer experiences, increase the results they obtain from their marketing campaigns and investments. Prior to Marketo, I've spent the last 20 years or so working in various digital and technology companies, most recently at Adobe, where I ran their strategic account program in EMEA. So in this time, I've worked with a lot of different companies, large and small, in a whole range of different industries, helping them transform their businesses for the digital era. And today I'm going to share some of the insights that I've learned from these experiences. To help me do this, I'm joined by Liam Jacklin, one of the partners at Agent 3, a technology consultancy and agency who specialize in helping companies set up marketing automation to drive strategies such as content marketing, lead management, and account-based marketing. So one of the common themes that we hear in all the companies we work with is that the world of marketing is changing and being changed by digital. In a world where we spend so much of our time online and indeed live whole aspects of our lives digitally, it's becoming increasingly hard to capture and keep the attention of our prospects and customers. So even strategies that worked so well in the early days of the digital era, for example, SEO and email marketing, are no longer sufficient to get the leads you need to keep your businesses growing. So as digital creates new ways to engage with customers through social media, display advertising, web apps, search, smart devices, chat, SMS, and so on, in addition to the traditional marketing approaches such as events, TV, direct mail, the user journeys that people take are becoming ever more fragmented and less consistent. So each individual chooses their own unique journey, and each individual has different preferences in terms of the channel, the content, the frequency of how they engage. In fact, research from Google suggests that 70% of customers cross 5 or more channels before they make a purchase decision. So we're living increasingly in a multi-channel world. And that means there's no one channel that can be relied upon to consistently reach your users. It means that all the campaigns that you are creating as marketing teams and the customer experiences that you're defining need to be designed from the outset to be multi-channel. And this creates challenges for the marketing team as well. So not only must marketers work in new ways, they've also got to learn new skills and new ways of thinking about marketing. So in the digital era, the ability to crunch numbers is often as important as the creative aspiration and inspiration behind your campaigns. So at this point, I'd like to pause and just take a moment to ask you what your biggest challenges are and that you and your teams are facing. So, so I'm just trying to launch our poll. Apologies. Okay, I might have to skip doing our poll, but just have a think to yourselves about the different challenges that you're facing. So is it developing the right skills in your organization? You know, is it getting the right budget to drive your transformation project? Is it measuring the return on investment from your marketing campaigns, acquiring new customers, shifting the way you engage to be more digital? Or is it actually taking responsibility for the whole customer life cycle? Or is it more classic IT problems such as connecting the different data in your silos? I think my colleagues have managed to activate the poll, so I'll give you a second to cast your votes. Okay. So I'm seeing here that there's a range of different challenges that you're facing. You're choosing your number one challenge. The top three I've got here. Acquiring customers seems to be out on top. Measuring return on investment and getting budget seem to also be very popular choices there. So whichever issue is keeping you awake at night, you're not alone. I mean, most of the customers and companies that we're working with are struggling with exactly the same kind of issues. So here you can see some results from a recent survey we ran with The Economist. So we asked 600 senior marketing executives across Europe to assess the challenges they thought they'd face in 2016. And as you can see, there's not one clear issue that's dominating. In fact, there's actually a range of issues and challenges that as a marketing team, you're being asked to take on and to address. So actually, evolving your engagement for the digital era involves evolving lots of different and improving lots of different aspects of your organization, your team, the skills you have, and as well as the kind of campaigns that you're running. And to help address this kind of broad range of issues, many companies are turning to technologies like marketing automation. So marketing automation and the strategies it supports, things like account-based marketing, personalization, multi-channel journey analysis, can really help companies' sales and marketing teams engage digitally. Now, when you make that decision to select a new marketing automation technology or platform, it's a big decision. But actually, to achieve the results you want, this is really just the starting point of the journey. So once you've got buy-in from the rest of the organization, you've chosen the technology that you want to use, how do you go about actually building this new customer experience, leveraging all of that data and creating those multi-channel campaigns? Well, buying the technology is just the first step in the road. There's still lots of hard work ahead. So let's talk a little bit about what your marketing transformation journey will be like. So here at Marketo, we work with a wide range of companies, both large and small, to help them address the sales and marketing challenges of the different era. For most enterprise and SMB companies, whether they're B2B or B2C, the journey is about evolving from your current starting point to where you want to be. And typically, this will mean moving from specific point-in-time, single-channel campaigns into continuous multi-channel conversations. Now, to manage your expectations, this journey can take a long time. It could take months, it could take years. With each year or each next campaign building on the success of the previous years, but you have to start somewhere. So no company can take a new technology, switch it on, and use every single feature on day one. So to give an example of two companies that have been on this journey, one a large company, Nokia Networks, another a small company, New Voice Media. So to begin with, they started right at the beginning of this journey. So they were sending, they were doing email marketing, they had their website, so but essentially they were doing single point-in-time campaigns. Their websites and the customer experience on those websites was pretty static. And what they did is they started off by refreshing their existing email campaigns, running them and moving them onto Marketo, and introducing new features into those campaigns, like leveraging A/B testing or personalizing the content in those emails. They also began to connect the channels together by bringing together the analytics from their web journeys and joining those analytics with the data they were collecting about engagement with emails. So that really started them off on that kind of journey. And as they've grown in experience, they've really expanded the scope of how they engage. So moving away from email blasts into and kind of drip nurture programs into email and content recommendations that are triggered by the behavior that individuals are showing and in the engagement with existing content and previous campaigns. So much more personalized experiences based on what people are doing as well as what you know about people. So over time, they've added on and built into that program. So leveraging more of the capabilities to move them along this kind of transformation journey. So by leveraging things like lead scoring, social media data, and CRM data, these companies have built a much richer view of how their customers engage and who their customers are. And this has helped their sales teams to focus their efforts on the prospects who are most engaged and who are the best match to that kind of ideal customer. So in the last few years, these companies have added personalized content to their web journeys and really started to create multi-channel journeys. So this means that the number of kind of campaigns that people are running over time will grow as you use this sort of platform. And this is what the automation allows you to do. It allows you to scale your platform. So for example, New Voice Media, in the first year of their deployment, they ran 37 different campaigns. 5 years later, without really any significant growth in their headcount, they were running 650 campaigns in a year and generating 20 times the pipeline from their marketing efforts in year 5 as opposed to what they were doing in year 1. And because they are collecting the data as they go through, they are able to understand the ROI, the return on investment from these marketing efforts. So this means when it comes to justifying the budget and justifying a request to increase budget, they've got the data to back up that request, and they know how they're going to invest. So those of you who answered that you were struggling to secure the budget, these sort of tools and platforms are going to give you the information which is going to help you justify expanding and where you spend that money. So that's all well and good, as you go on that journey, but you've got to start somewhere. And really, in all cases, the companies we see follow the same kind of 5 steps in the early days to help get them off the starting blocks. So the first step is to really understand who their personas are, who the segments that they want to target are. So sitting down and it's not about turning the technology on, but actually thinking, well, who are the customers that I want to reach? What do they like? What's the attributes of those customers? Then they're looking at the content that they've got. So actually auditing the content, going through, well, what have I got at the moment? What can I use? What can I reuse? And where does this content fit in the different stages of that buyer's journey? So looking back at their core segments, looking at the different stages those people are going to go through as they buy or as they engage, or which content is appropriate where. And of course, if they've done that audit of the content, they can work out as they start to build these nurture tracks and engagement tracks, maybe building them in multi-channels, maybe starting with a single channel, as we said earlier. But you can start to see, well, where are the gaps? What content do I need to refresh? What content do I need to go out and replace or have written to build the kind of customer experience I want? So then they move on to really starting to run those first campaigns. And to begin with, this is all about testing and getting the baseline data and starting to improve, to use things like scoring to understand where people are in that journey and how fast they're progressing through that journey, and using techniques like A/B testing to work out which is the best content for which persona at which stage in their journey. And then the 5th step is to integrate with the sales team. So in a B2B environment, that's typically the CRM system. In a B2C environment, that's typically some sort of data warehouse. And connecting with the actual processes for the sales team. So when do I pass a lead to my sales team? Which leads need to be followed up and called back? Or in a B2C case, potentially that's connecting with your e-commerce engine. So these sort of are the 5 core steps as you go through that journey. and that's talk about how you plan that marketing automation project and how you plan for this journey in more detail. I'm going to hand over to Liam.
Thank you, Tom. So just before we launch into it, just a very, very quick overview of who Agent 3 are, because I think it helps to give a little bit of context to who we are and why we're involved. So we are a business that, as Tom mentioned at the earlier, specialize in helping customers to begin their journey to what we term modern marketing. And part of modern marketing is aspects such as account-based marketing, which is a real specialization of ours, but also it's around using technology and tools such as Marketo and marketing automation to make your marketing, A, more intelligent, but B, certainly more efficient and effective. And so for that reason, we do a lot of work with customers who have either they're just beginning their journey towards marketing automation, or maybe they've been doing marketing automation for a while and they just need some support in getting more outcomes from that in that term. So we work with a whole range of customers, some very, very big ones and some very small ones. But what's really interesting is that they have a very typical pain point, certainly from a marketing perspective, and that is almost always around how do I engage with my customers better. So I want to make sure that my marketing is hitting the mark. I want to be driving more leads across the sales. Maybe I want to upsell, cross-sell to these people. And often it's actually, what are the new techniques or the new ways of doing things that maybe I haven't done in the past, but I would certainly like to do. So we support lots of customers across that kind of life cycle, and at the heart of everything that Agent 3 does is we apply what we call ABM principles. And I'm sure people on this call here have heard lots about ABM. It's very much a buzzword in the industry at the moment. But I think what we believe is, yes, there's a buzzword to it, and there's lots of different interpretations to ABM. And for some customers, they may be doing really pure ABM, and some might just be doing really good marketing. But we always start with these sort of application of kind of core principles. So you need some insight at the heart of everything. So either that could be some third-party data about your customers or your leads, or it might be insight that you get from your marketing automation platform. So you might be looking for people with a certain demographic and how they behave on your website and which campaigns they interact with. So those kind of bits of data really help you to put some insight at the heart of what you're doing. Then we look at focusing on the accounts that matter. So for a lot of customers, particularly in the B2B world, there is almost no value in doing these huge, broad brush, spray and pray type activities, because for a lot of B2B companies, there is a very, very defined market that matters to them and that they're going to be able to sell to. So we really encourage customers to focus on the accounts that matter. So don't create campaigns and messages that are very, very generic and high level and go out to 20,000 different companies when actually that only 100 companies will ever buy your proposition. So we do a lot of work with customers to help them do that. And then once you've done that, and you've got the insight on the account, which accounts or which targets you're going after, is how do you then tailor that content so that it really hits these decision makers and makes them want to engage further with you. So as Tom talked about in his presentation, we're way beyond the days where you could just push out a message and people would respond. The reality is that leads expect a level of engagement. They expect you to nurture them. They expect you to build a relationship with them. So how do we do that through the various different digital channels that are available to us? Often, I think one of the big mistakes often made with marketing automation is the assumption that it's just an email tool. It is a much, much bigger kind of opportunity than just email. We've touched upon things like web journeys, but there's other things like how do you incorporate, maybe you're doing lead acquisition through some of your digital channels. How do you incorporate that into your marketing automation is a really key thing that a lot of customers look to us to support them around. And the huge one that is really technology has allowed us to do at scale, and a tool like Marketo really allows you to do is to personalize. So, again, going back to this idea that a generic message is just not going to cut through anymore. So how can you personalize at scale? And marketing automation is a very obvious opportunity to do that, but that also obviously takes an element of pre-planning and pre-thinking to make that happen. And the final thing, of course, as all good marketers want to do, is they want to deliver commercial impact. So how can we show that impact that we're having? And again, going back to the marketing automation side of things, things like in Marketo with the revenue modeler and some of the other aspects around reporting and bits and pieces, it becomes much easier for you as a marketer to have that objective conversation with your sales team about what it is that your team is actually delivering in terms of value to the organization. So we'll come on to touch on some of these a little bit further on, but I thought it was just useful to set that context of how Agent 3 approaches digital campaigns and marketing more generally. So as was discussed, and certainly in the sort of preview materials that you would have been sent to sign up to this, one of the things that we wanted to look at is you've got agreement from your board, you've got agreement from your key stakeholders that marketing automation is a good thing. Generally most people can agree and understand why that would be. And so what we wanted to look at is once you've got that agreement, what do you do? What do you need to do next? What are the things within your organizations that you need to kind of address or make right? And this slide here is, I'm not going to bore you by reading them all out, but these are very, very common comments that we hear from customers. It's called marketing automation, so surely now I can just kick back and do nothing because it's fully automated. And whilst there's an element of truth in that, there is also really it's about using that as an opportunity to take your marketing to a new and better level. Things around what the sales team will expect, very, very key to manage expectations. This whole opportunity to move to an automated nurture approach, that's a huge step forward for a lot of organizations who maybe have been using just a large-scale mail distribution service or similar, and they haven't really been doing nurturing. So that realignment of expectations of just because we used to send a weekly newsletter in the past, maybe we can change to a whole new world where we nurture a client and we take them on a content journey. Those things really do need addressing before you roll out the marketing automation. So we're going to dig into some of these things a little bit deeper, but I just thought it was useful to, again, just to show you some very common things that we either hear from customers or we see, it's important to set expectations around them. So the first bit is, content and the right customers. I'm aware there's a slight delay on the slide, so I'm hoping that it's not too far behind what I'm talking about. But basically, although I've called it right content, right audience, actually, you should start the other way around, which is with your audience. So what do they care about? What do they want to hear about that your organization can help them with? And I think there are still a lot of organizations, I'm sure you're all very familiar with the kind of the funnel model, where, kind of going from that awareness through to consideration. Now, we find a lot of organizations are very, very good at that lower funnel stuff. So the consideration stage when you're getting, product brochures and data sheets and other bits and pieces. Lots of our customers are brilliant at that. They've got more than enough content around that area. Where they really struggle is that initial engagement. So, sometimes it's characterized as thought leadership. Other people would call it kind of, opinion forming, all that kind of stuff. We find most businesses actually really struggle with that bit. And so I would really encourage you to think about, where does my content journey begin for my audience? So who are they? What do they care about? What's their pain points that they're suffering with that potentially your organization could help them with? So it doesn't need to be an overt sales message, but it can be that discussion of, we understand that you have this issue and here is how you could address this, et cetera, et cetera. And that can be done through a whole creative set of different ways. It might be short videos, it could be infographics, it could be white papers, whatever it is. That almost doesn't matter quite as much as what is it the audience actually wants to hear from you. I think the final point on that slide, which is an unsurprising one for anyone working in marketing, is that people are being overloaded by stuff every single day. So whatever you put together, you really need to think about, does this differentiate me? What am I saying that's different to either my competitors or other people that are also hoping to get in front of these leads? And whilst a lot of this seems blindingly obvious, I do think it's really key to think about it before you move ahead with rolling out your marketing. Final slide around this topic is, how do you once you've decided on your audience, what are their personas? Are there ways that you could potentially segment them? So, in most cases, it's probably unachievable to do one-to-one marketing to everybody. In some cases, that may be your objective, but in general, most people will need to group people in some way, shape, or form in order to be able to do things at scale. So, could it be by persona? Could it be by where they are in the country? Could it be by the sector that they work in? Could it be the job title they got? All those kind of things. If you can start to think, how can I segment my audience so that I can give them a more personalized experience as we go through? The other thing is, to my point about that most organizations have plenty of content. They often don't struggle with having content. So take a step back. Review what you've got on file already. What have you already got on your website? Maybe you've got it in the locker from other stuff that you've done in maybe previous years, and start to map that out. So, persona A, what kind of content do we already have for that individual, and how could we turn that into a journey? And I think the journey thing is really, really important to think about when you're thinking about marketing automation, because that's one of the real light bulb moments that you can get with marketing automation. Is you can at scale take these people on a journey in a largely automated way when you're using triggers and smart campaigns and other bits and pieces to help push them through. But you should always be thinking, in that content journey, how am I developing the story? How am I developing the engagement with my customer, and how am I pushing them on in that journey down the funnel? Because ultimately we still want a commercial outcome, but we need to take them on that journey. So basically, right content, right time, and through the right channel. How best can you achieve that? So at the end of each of these sections, I'm just going to put a little summary, but it's 3 or 4 things that I think most marketers could go away to get to tomorrow and have a think about. What could we actually do in our organization? And for this content section, I think it's define your audience. It's evaluate your content. What have you already got that you could use? Map the journey. What does that journey actually look like, and how do we align that with the buying cycle? And then really critically, ask yourself, would I read it? And whilst that seems, again, like a bit of a stupid question, there is a lot of email stuff that is sent out of organizations that if you took a step back and looked at it and thought, would I actually want to read this? Would this engage me? I suspect that you might end up coming to the conclusion that you probably wouldn't. So it is useful to be quite critical and maybe get an opinion from outside your marketing team. Talk to the sales guys. Is this content relevant, et cetera, et cetera. And that's a pretty good test of is this the right content to be sending out to my customers. So if we've done content, and I've touched upon nurturing quite a bit there as we talked that through, spray and pray is it's outdated. It's a very old way of doing things, and to be totally honest with you, it's fairly ineffective. So the beautiful thing that things like marketing automation and Marketo can allow you to do is to start to take people on a journey that's specific to them. And that might be, in the beginning, you may just have one nurture journey, and that's okay. You can get that up running, create it as a proof of concept, and then start to apply those learnings to other nurture tracks. The other thing with nurture tracks that is quite a different way of thinking about things is the longevity of them. So in the past, where you maybe just had an email distribution platform, is you probably would have launched a campaign on the 1st of November, got it out there, sent out your first email, maybe sent a follow-up the next week, and maybe if you're lucky, one a couple of weeks later after that. And that would have kind of been the end of it. So if your lead wasn't interested at that particular point, or maybe they were on holiday, so they just didn't open that email, you've effectively built this beautiful campaign that a lot of people don't actually see. the really interesting thing about applying a nurturing mindset is that you can start to respond to when the customer is actually interested. So, it might be that they come to your website and look at a particular page on that website, and that might be the trigger to push them into a nurture campaign and start to push them content around that particular offering. Hopefully, again, pushing them down that decision funnel towards a possibility of sales engaging them. So the best nurture tracks and the best nurturing we see with customers are the ones who let it run for a long time. We have one customer who has I'm just being told my audio is getting a bit shaky, so I hope that's not too bad. But the one of our customers who uses nurturing very, very effectively, they've had their 18 months. So that same set of content that they designed originally, they've been able to keep that running. They're still getting leads coming through that funnel and pushing through to sales and with no particular issues. So lots of stuff on the screen there. I'm not going to read that all out to you because I'm sure you've read that as I've talked, but taking a nurturing mindset is probably one of the biggest step changes you can make when you move towards marketing automation. So again, just thinking about things that you can do tomorrow. So I think certainly start to think about what those nurture tracks are. So for some organizations, that might be aligned to a product or solution. For other organizations, it might be around the audience persona. And that's you will know best for your organization what works. But again, start to think in those terms of the buying cycle. So what content will they need at each stage of that buying cycle? And then obviously build out content to align with that, and think about the triggers and the automated rules that you might want to put in place. So Tom mentioned scoring earlier, and apologies, this slide has gone a bit skewed. It's my own fault for trying to put too much on it. But basically, the main point which sadly has been covered is that not all leads are created equal, and that is absolutely the case for almost all organisations I've ever come across. So the best opportunity for you to gain credibility with the sales team and ultimately to get real value from the capabilities that marketing automation gives you is to put in a very well thought out lead scoring program. Now, there's obviously two ways you can score. One is the explicit stuff, so that might be actions that they've taken, so they visited certain web pages or they've opened certain emails, or it might be implicit, so things like their demographic or their job title or other things or they may be already a current customer around a particular product. That kind of stuff can all absolutely accrue in their score. But the major point around scoring is that you do need to have alignment with the sales team. A lot of times I've seen customers who have created a really nice scoring program. It all makes a lot of sense on paper, but when they're sending MQLs through to sales, they're getting rejected and having them sent back. And predominantly that's because they haven't consulted with the sales team about what a good lead actually looks like. And once you've established that, and again, whilst that seems like a really silly question to ask, once you've understood what levels of knowledge should the customer have, a prospect have before we call them, those kind of things, you can start to build that into your scoring program and hopefully make that ever more effective as you're going on. The other major difference is, and again, it would differ from organization to organization, but for some organizations who for many, many years have been very used to gaining, several thousand leads every month, throwing them over the fence to sales, washing the hands of it and saying, I've done my job, here's 1,000 leads. But then sales look at that and say, only about 2 of these leads are of any use to me. You've now got to change your expectations to that because we've got scoring and it's an objective system, these people and the quality should be very, very much higher, but we also need you to take action faster. So agreeing an SLA between yourself and sales is very, very important, but also educating them that they're probably not going to get their 1,000 leads a month anymore because you're going to set a much higher quality bar, which will mean that the quantity is far less, but the quality is much higher. And again, that seems like a really obvious discussion to have, but a lot of the organizations we deal with forget to have that conversation in the outset, and then it reaches a crisis point where the sales team are banging on the door saying, where have all my leads gone? So it's worth having those conversations early. So again, just thinking about things you can do tomorrow. So think about what categories could you score for. So what kind of demographic things, what kind of actions would you be looking for from a scoring perspective? Have a discussion with sales and work out what an MQL threshold should look like from a scoring perspective. And then also obviously have that conversation around that change from quantity over to quality. Very short section here. It's about integration, and that's very much linked to this idea of the combining with sales. And that's really about how do you make sure that the sales team have the information? So that could be integration with your CRM, things like Salesforce and Dynamics and other systems are obviously very well supported by Marketo. But the key bit is that aligned to this idea of quality is you can now give the sales team some real insight into why that lead has been passed through. So, you will be able to say they have interacted with these 3 pieces of content. They've been on this website, they've looked at this email, they came to this webinar, etc., etc. All of those things should empower the sales team to have a much better conversation with the customer. But often, whilst the integration might be created, the marketing teams often forget to explain to the sales team that they now have this information available to them. And so, again, thinking about things that you could do tomorrow, that is certainly right up there, is educate them about this new information that you can get hold of for them. And that's information is power, particularly to a sales guy who's picking up the phone. So that additional information that and the additional value you can provide has to be a win within the organization. And the other one is that bottom point, which is the re-nurturing. So ensuring that your sales team are aware that if they come across a lead that is maybe just not quite ready, there are ways that they can be pushed back into the automation system to be re-nurtured until a point that they are ready again. In the past, that lead probably would have been cast and nothing more would have been done with them. But now you have an opportunity to automate that process that allows them to be pushed back in, re-nurtured for some time, and hopefully become sales ready a little bit later down the line. Again, things you can do tomorrow. Think about the fields that you would want to integrate between marketing and the CRM. Ensure the data is as clean and up to date as possible. I know every organization struggles with that, but that is pretty key, particularly when you're thinking about segmenting audiences and running smart campaigns to particular segments of your base. The data quality is going to be key in how effective that is. And then work with the sales team to educate them on what new information and what new ways of working could there be between the two of you. So just to conclude, there is no bullet, unfortunately, much as it would be wonderful if there was. But I think if you follow a simple, well-defined strategy, think about the foundations, some of those things that we've just talked about. I appreciate I've fairly raced through them, but we're trying to keep the time best we can. Try to get those foundations in place. Bring sales along with you. Do not assume that because it's a marketing automation system, therefore only marketing should have an input into it. Absolutely bring sales on the journey with you. Take incremental steps. It's sort of the old adage of don't run before you can walk. The best deployments that we see within customers are the ones that begin with very specific use cases, and then they ripple out as they get those proofs of concept and they get that learning done. And a bit like the example Tom gave about New Voice Media, they begin with 1 or 2 nurtures, and then later in that year there could be up to 10, 15 different campaigns that's going on at any one time. Don't underestimate the need for process and organizational change, and within that I mean the education of your wider organization about what this potentially means for them. And just remember that the really cool thing about technology like Marketo is they're always evolving and they're always adding new functionality, and that only means things are going to get cleverer. So, I'm just thinking in the last 12 to 18 months, Marketo has added web personalization, they've added ABM, the more clever content journeys, or the logic behind those content journeys is getting cleverer. So, again, from an expectation setting point of view, it's absolutely key to your internal stakeholders and customers to be clear with them that this is an evolution, and we will be able to do more and more interesting stuff as we go along. And I'd encourage you to kind of keep up to date with that new functionality as much as possible, because some of this stuff is genuinely game changing in the way that marketing is being delivered. So I've talked quite quickly. It's probably not quick enough, but I do think we've got some time for questions. I don't know if I should pass it back to you, Tom.
Yeah, so thanks everybody for listening. All the slides that you've seen today will be available for download, the link to which we'll send out in a follow-up email. So now we've got a few minutes left for questions and answers. So if you've got any questions, please type them into the chat box now. Or alternatively, feel free to get in touch with us individually. So we've put our contact details up there on the screen. So feel free to drop us a note, connect on LinkedIn, and we can follow up one-to-one. So yeah, if you've got any questions, please enter them into the chat box now. Don't be shy.
Just while we wait for that, Tom, I wonder, obviously I've given the external point of view in terms of when we work with customers about their deployment, but I wondered almost from Marketo's side of things, because you tend to be involved even earlier in the cycle, if there's any additional things that you think maybe customers should be thinking about as they go down this path.
Well, I think a good one there, and we've kind of touched on it in the topic today, is to do the things in parallel. Don't look at the procurement of the software platform as something you do as a step before you plan the project. The most successful implementations are actually planning what they want to do almost before they choose the software. And then those two activities, selecting the right platform for their needs and defining their strategy, happen side by side. And that's really a great sort of precursor or indicator that the project's going to get results quickly. People are thinking ahead to the next stage before they actually get there. Okay, so I think I have two questions from the audience. Apologies if you're getting feedback. I'm getting a bit of feedback on mine, so apologies for that. So a couple of questions. So I'll take the top one on the list. I work for a not-for-profit organisation. We don't currently have any automation in place. Is there or any obvious content for nurturing? Where would you recommend we start? I mean, it's the same as we've discussed in the presentation today. Think about who your target profiles are. Think about who the people you want to reach on, and perhaps the different ways you could identify them. And then start to think, well, how would you reach them? What are their priorities? Why are they going to be interested in working with you or donating to your charity? And look, I mean, you'll have content already. You'll have content on the website. So how would that match to their needs? And which content should you present first? If someone visits your website, they're not subscribed to any of your emails, what's the first thing they should see versus somebody who's a repeat donor who's coming back multiple times? So really start at the top of that journey and think about how we can identify those people and what's going to be the best way of engaging them. I don't know, Liam, have you got any comments on that one?
Yeah, I'd agree, absolutely. I think it's thinking about what a typical person that does come to your website, what are their needs? What are they coming to satisfy? What's if you like, their pain point? What is it that they're looking for information around? And then begin to think about a journey from there. So as Tom said, somebody who regularly donates is probably going to have a very different reason for coming to your site versus somebody who maybe has come there for the first time and knows nothing more about your organization. So in that case, functionality such as real-time personalization could be very, very effective in helping them to formulate a good view of what your organization is doing. I hope that's helpful in some way.
So I'll jump to the next question in the list. So what CRM solutions does Marketo integrate with, and is a list available? So very quickly, all flavors of Microsoft Dynamics, Salesforce, and Sugar are all integrated out of the box. And then we integrate with a long list of other CRMs on a case-by-case basis. So depending how those CRMs, if you're using SAP, for example, or a custom in-house CRM, depending how that's set up, we might approach it in a different way, but we will be able to integrate with it. We're a completely open platform, so there's not really any limitations about how we can connect to things like CRM. So the next question, these are nice broad ones. So what exactly do you automate through tools like Marketo? And there was another one which was, is marketing automation, web personalization, account-based marketing, and content journeys? So kind of to answer them both at the same time, really any aspect of your digital marketing we can help manage through Marketo. But I mean, one of the things we think about before we think about what we're going to automate is what data we're going to collect. So if I was to describe a system like Marketo, I'd say, we are collecting data about every step in the customer's journey, whether they've downloaded a mobile app, whether they've shared something on social, opened an email, visited an event, phoned your call center, whatever it is. So we bring all that data together, and then we use that data to personalize the different places your customers engage. So in terms of what would we automate, or what campaigns would we choose to automate? It's really whatever your customer does. So if your prime way of engaging with your customers is through a mobile app, we'd be personalizing that app experience and customizing that. If people engage in a range of channels, they go to events, they do webinars, they do emails and so on, we'd help automate all of those different programs. So it really depends on what your customer journey is and the customer experience you want to create. It's not really limited to a single channel or a single kind of strategy. The question is always, well, the technology is great, but what's the strategy you want to pursue? And then we'll work out how we can help you pursue that strategy. So there's a fairly hands-on one here with a number of workspaces in play. Can you run a series of nurturing campaigns at the same time? So workspaces in Marketo are ways of organizing different aspects of the campaigns you set up, and the answer is yes. I mean, you can have multiple different campaigns running in different workspaces in the same workspace and so on. So there's we're not going to limit the number of active campaigns that you can have, and the workspace is just helping you manage those and align those to the different teams. So a team sees the campaign that are relevant for them when they log into the system. Just going through.
And that's all we have for time for today.
So thank you very much, everyone, for listening. And as I say, there'll be a recording of this session and the slides available for download after the webinar is finished. Thanks, everyone.